today's podcast episode, I had the pleasure to connect with Joshua and Prez. I actually discovered them on TikTok, where they were putting out these videos of quote-unquote worship songs where the lyrics were derived from parts of the Bible you've probably not read more than once or ever. I'm going to play you some audio so you get an idea of their sense of humor, because the videos are hilarious.
What's up, everyone? We are back on God's mission, and we are tired of hearing worship songs get watered down. So we decided to take something straight from Scripture, and we can't wait to share it with you.
If two men are fighting and the wife of one of them comes to rescue her husband from his assailant, she reaches out and seizes him by his private parts. You shall cut off her hand and show her no pity. Be blessed.
So as you can see, their sense of humor very closely aligned with mine. In my conversation with them, I saw that we had a lot in common in terms of our story, and how Christian faith has impacted our lives, and how deconstruction of that Christian faith has impacted our lives. But it was such a fun conversation, and we talked about all kinds of stuff. We talked about Halloween and smoking weed and working at a church full time. Josh was actually a former pastor of a church that he'd served at and attended for 20 years. And it was something that I can obviously relate to. But we literally talked about stinging yourself with bees on purpose for medical reasons. I mean, need I say any more? This was an interesting conversation. So listen in, and here it is. Here's our conversation. My conversation with Josh and Prez. So, Joshua and Prez.
Yeah.
Is Prez like short for something?
It's short for Presley, which I started going by Prez because because I was a sound engineer, and being a sound engineer in the church for whatever reason, like they all thought that Prez was a boy's name, and it just was like, it honestly, like, because when they think of I think I like really surprise them because I'm like 5'3" and like 100 pounds, and so the first question I always get asked is like, do you need help moving stuff? And the answer is no, I don't actually, and I can unload a whole snake by myself. But I started going by Prez instead.
It was often like, right, you were telling me it was like shocking to people because they'd like be expecting to see a dude, right?
Yeah, I would if I saw like Prez like on a whatever.
Or even like by word of mouth, they thought it was Perez, which they thought was like my last name. So they didn't even know, and then they'd see me and they'd be like, the singers are over there. No, leave the big jobs for the men.
Which I always thought was brilliant, because you told me this, which was that you told me you would say that your name was Prez because you didn't want them assuming that you were a female, like
or a male,
and oftentimes they would come in showing more respect if they didn't know, which is nuts. That's insane.
It's the world we live in.
It is, unfortunately.
Yep.
I have a friend that he's always come across as older, and so he never tells anybody what his age is. And anywhere he's ever worked, he doesn't want them to know, because they'll respect him less. It's like he'll have like some director position, whatever, and they don't know he's like 24, but the dude looks like he's 40, which isn't great. But it's especially in like the workplace, it's totally a thing. So why don't we start with just getting a little bit. I want to learn about your background. Like how did y'all meet, and why are you where you are, and why are there guitars behind you, and all that.
Yeah. So we met in the church, and then I went through a transition out of the church, and in that time, the two of us became really close. We became roommates, which was incredible to have a roommate during the pandemic that was nice and beautiful. And but through the pandemic, it was hard because we both got really sick. So Presley got diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, and so I was caring for Presley throughout this time. And got into gardening, started like gardening because one of the things is she needed an organic diet. And so we got into gardening.
Plus, we were like, I was completely broke from paying for treatment. So that was like $500 a week.
Oh my God. What?
Sorry,
for Lyme disease?
It was $800 a week, yeah, for intravenous. Because it's a long story, but because the CDC doesn't recognize it as an infectious disease, you won't get covered for it through
what?
Most
what the hell? Are you serious?
Even though, especially you on the East Coast know that it's 500,000 cases like annually are recognized by the CDC. That doesn't even include all of the others.
I'm like super. I don't go outside. I'm like really ignorant about Lyme disease. What does it do to you? Like what's?
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm so glad that you asked. Honestly, so it is a type of disease that mimics a lot of other autoimmune diseases. It's incredibly neurological and it progresses over time to get worse and worse, essentially. And so some things that it can cause are seizures, paralysis, like an encephalitis in your head, like inflammation in your brain. It gets kind of misdiagnosed as a lot of other things from cancers to fibromyalgia, MS, ALS. All kinds of things, and we just don't know a ton about it, but we do know that it's vector borne. So it's typically spread by like spiders, ticks.
Are those the vectors?
Yes, those are the vectors.
That's and they sound like robots. Like this, it sounds like a cool thing to be a vector.
So we will slip into this kind of. So we have another like passion, which is we have another side of TikTok that we're on where we educate people about bees and Lyme disease, which there's oh gosh, this is where we lose everyone. So we actually sting Presley with bees 3 times a week because it is putting her chronic Lyme disease into remission. I know that sounds like totally fucking crazy, and it is, but the rad thing is it's scientifically proven and it's working, and it's like it's changed our life.
Whatever works.
Plus, like, regardless of what you believe in, it is scientifically proven that bee venom's antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, antifungal. It's also will break through the blood-brain barrier, which just basically means like, wow, that's amazing. And then on top of that, it stays in your body for 48 hours. Bacteria replicates every 24 typically, so that it just makes sense. Like antibiotics can't stand our body for long enough time, and so it just will continue to basically replicate over.
You know what's funny? I follow you on Instagram and I see this thing about stinging, and I'm like, are they misspelling singing? Like, what's happening? I get it now. That's wild.
Sting along, yeah.
Sting along.
Yeah, the sting along. So basically, that's kind of what she got into, and then at that same time, I got diagnosed with diverticulitis, which is like
my wife. She got some of the diverticulitis.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. It's an awful thing to go through. I got it the day after I turned 40 years old, which is like, if you Google it, it's like takes place in men 40 and older. And of course, like the day after my birthday, I get diagnosed with diverticulitis, and then I found myself like having major surgery. And so in a sense, like the two of us like go through this crazy pandemic, like get sick, nurse each other back to health, fall in love, and then start a business. Like it
just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's like it's just so much happened all of a sudden.
Yeah, and then pair into that, the like at the beginning of that all, like leaving the church, like having a 20-year career for me at. I was 20 years a professional Christian at this church.
You were telling me earlier that you reached the point of being like an executive pastor at it. Like you were in the cabinet or whatever, like the big boys.
Yeah. So I started out as like the junior high intern they brought me up at like 18 years old. They didn't pay me for like the first 3 months. I was living in my car.
Only 3 months?
Yeah, right. But I seriously, I was homeless. Like I was living in my car.
Wow.
I was turning in cans for money so I could get food.
Wow. Where was this? This is in California?
This is like in the Northern California area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I remember like the only thing I knew about this church was that their worship leader had an incredible voice and he used to be homeless. Like those were the only two things Joshua was.
Which honestly, that's what I want to be known for in my life, like the homeless worship leader guy.
It's funny. We actually have that in common. I had a little homelessness while in my college days. I mean, I wasn't living in a car for that long. I wasn't living in a car at all, but I was doing like the couch hopping for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still has the same, well, similar feeling because that's what happened to me when like I didn't want to tell people I was sleeping in my car because I was like, it was like only if like a little bit, but I was like, I'm fine. I just don't need people like you just don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Like Northern California, I've been there at least a couple times, and it was like I saw like billboards, like church billboards and stuff. It just felt so not California to me. Like it's like the most Christian part of California. Am I correct in that assumption? Is that how?
Northern California?
Like going like to like when I was near, I visited Bethel, and being in Northern California, it was like everybody was churchy.
That's a different kind of Northern California.
Like how far north were you talking?
That's like up by Bethel, so that's Redding. That's not too bad. Where it gets really kooky is once you get like in like Bakersfield and like like Head from Korn, you know, like the
yeah.
That guy, like, was he the guitar player or the bass player? I don't remember.
Guitar,
no,
yeah.
Selby was the bass player.
Head Welch. Yeah.
Head, that's where his church is. Like that's where he like became a Christian and like all of that. That's also where like most of the meth is produced.
Yeah, I think of Northern California as like churches, bikers, meth, and like
Tahoe.
Yeah, that's what I think about.
Yeah, we are more like
Bay
Area, so it's a different. Like we're tech, like
Silicon
Valley kind of area.
But then like Bay Area, chill vibes.
Totally.
So what was that like? I mean, that sounds like you're living in a place that was not super church friendly or like, conservative or whatever. With like the church thing happening in the mix, like what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we have her story is insane. I don't know how much you want to like jump into it tonight or whatever, but like
we'll see what happens.
Well, the last time she's very much still like processing a lot of stuff. I have deconstructed a lot, but I always wore this is a badge of pride. In my area, it was like less than 4% of the area it identifies as Christian, right? And it was like, so I had this like sense of like, I'm doing the real Lord's work. Like there was a pride to that, like, screw everybody in the Bible Belt. Like where like Satan has a foothold. That was kind of like, like common language, like Satan has a foothold in this area. And now like I'm outside of that and I see like, oh no, this area just does not put up with a lot of bullshit. Like it really is like, and so, but odd growing up in an area that did reject God so much, but it gave me a weird sense of like job security and stability because I was always like this token cool guy. And so, because I didn't grow up in the church, like I put myself in it, and I like thought all these Christian things and just Christianity in general was like super cheesy, and so, but they liked this about me, which was cool. Like they celebrated me in that way, but I became this like token cool guy that like basically they used me so other people would be like, well, Joshua's here, like, so it can't be that bad.
It honestly worked on me. He's literally was the only part I was like, I don't know, I think this church is kind of lame, but like at least the worship leader is really
At least that
good.
the cute homeless guy is.
Cute
Yeah,
homeless
the
man.
cute homeless dude. I pull off homeless chic well.
Yeah, we have a lot in common in that sense. I grew up, and it was sort of weird. Like I grew up in this subculture where my family came from the Dominican Republic, and Protestantism is relatively new to DR compared to the rest of the world. Where the way that the East Coast was colonized was all these Protestants, and so the East Coast was already Protestant from day one. Well,
Yeah.
day one according to what Americans think day one is, and in the Dominican Republic, our colonizers were Catholic. So becoming a Protestant was like that. It was like the new wave. It was the new thing, and especially the charismatic movement, like speaking in tongues and the whole thing. And so my family was kind of like kicked out of the Catholic Church. Then they started churches, and they put them all over Latin America. And the first one they started with actually was in Jersey City, here in New Jersey. And so we were like coming into this place where, just like the West Coast, nobody wants to go to church. And the people who did were the local other Hispanics that were going through the same changes in their own culture. So our church was totally Hispanic, like forever. Like it was all Hispanics. And we were like, it was sort of like an oasis in like a big dark valley of Satan in the New York area. And so like I was always like the other. I was always other. And we didn't do the things that our neighbors did. Like nobody cursed in my family. I didn't do the baggy jeans. I never did any of the things that urban kids my age did. None of that stuff because of the church. And so I was kind of used to that my whole life. And then when I started working at the mega church, I was one of the only Hispanic people, because this was like in the suburbs, so it was like all white people.
Yeah.
And so I was like the guy coming in from the outside, and it's like, oh, here comes the guy with the culture. And I remember the big thing was sneakers. Like I remember one time for my birthday, they gave me like a signed card, and it was like a big Jordan sneaker on the front. I was like the guy who was about the sneakers, which made no sense to me, but it was like foreign to them. And forever I was like the token sneaker guy. I remember the pastor would like fist bump me. Like, why are you fist bumping me? Because I was from like Jersey City. I was from like the urban part of New Jersey. Yeah, so I could totally see that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like I can't even, like, one story I can think of is so like it's typical that big mega churches will rent their spaces out to smaller churches in the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's really common in like, so I grew up, or I didn't grow up, but like I was like my highest Christianness, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, was probably when I was living in LA. And so we're getting like a huge, like, diverse group of people, but one of them is like it's in the valley. It's like very Presbyterian and very like male dominated, and very like to the point where like men wouldn't shake my hand because I was a woman. Like, as
Mm-hmm.
crazy as that sounds, you get it, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that I'll
And
never
side
forget.
hugs.
Yes, lots of like side hugs, saving room for Jesus, absolutely. But one of the things I remember at this church, and I was so disappointed in it, because everyone, like, there was only one Asian woman there. I remember that was it. Like, I didn't see anybody else of any other ethnicity. But this pastor was trying to tell a story to the entire congregation about, like, it's amazing that like we can all come together. Like, for example, the Korean church that uses our place on Sunday mornings. They were outside, and you know what they were eating? Pizza. Can you believe it? Here they are just eating pizza like all of us. And I was so angry, and I looked at the woman, the other Asian woman. I was like, she's going to say something. Nothing. Like, I looked at my partner at the time. Like, I was mad at my partner. I was like, you got to talk to them about that. Like, how that's not okay. That language is not inclusive, and you have somebody on your staff who is Asian, and he's like, I can't say anything. I'm like, I have to keep my job here. Like, any sort of manipulation, like everything about our lives was like, even to like, I used to, my partner used to, I'm kind of rambling, I'm sorry. My partner used to make me like make sure I didn't have like my chest showing. Like I used to wear dresses backwards because it was more
let me tell
modest.
you something. So my wife, she's gonna hate that I talk about this, but I'm sure I'll get it cleared with her. But my
Okay.
wife forever got used to wearing t-shirts backwards because the neckline is higher on the back. So she would wear her shirts like with the neckline all the way up, like halfway up her neck, and then like a big exposed back area. And I'm like, dude, just wear it normal. She's like, I don't want to show my chest. And I'm like, that fear is from the church days, and we gotta we gotta work on that because
Right?
that looks so
Right.
crazy.
And also this mentality that you like had to carry around of like you're responsible for another man's thoughts. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely believed it was my power and responsibility as a woman, a bride of Christ, not let my brother stumble.
you
Like
Jezebel.
I would write it in my journal I pray that I have the wisdom to like not lead lustfully. Like I was like 16. What am I
The
doing?
silly thing is that little do they know that there is nothing that a girl can do to stop me from stumbling if I wanted to. Especially, dude,
right?
dude, I like peak hormone 17-year-old. There's nothing they could do. They could do like this. They could dress like the women with the slit and like the hood coverings and the Islam thing. They could have done that, and I still would have been like,
Yeah. Honestly, hopefully this might be something. I remember, like, we were just talking about this the other night, like, when you would be, like, hanging out with yourself,
Yeah.
and God would pop into your, like, thought, and then you'd have this quick, like, negotiation, like, sorry, God, like,
Last time. Or it's like, okay, I'm good, and then I'm going to the store. We're going to the store.
God, I promise. Like,
Like I used to pray, like, dear God, please, like, take these dirty thoughts out of my mind. Like, not even like, just like get rid of them. That's what I really thought was like what you're supposed to do. Just get
Yeah.
rid of those thoughts because it was sinful. Like it was, and like I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to hell.
as a guy in that, I was told too, like, it was like my responsibility as a man to keep my stuff under control, which, yeah, I agree, but like, you cannot keep as a 16-year-old boy or like even like a 14, 13, your thoughts are insane.
Dude, I know. So I'm also attracted to women. So me being a 16-year-old girl being like, I don't know, boobs are kind of cool. Like, like fuck. I'm like, I don't think we really need two fingers.
Yeah.
So what is your like household look like? Do you like live with? Because I know Josh, you have kids. Do you live with them or like what's the they live with y'all?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So 2 kiddos.
Fully
and
blended.
Yeah, we're full blended family. We co-parent with their mom, and we try and keep the peace. So,
Okay.
but both kids are incredible. They're both really kind.
How old are they?
They're 10 and 12 years old,
Nice.
and both very different.
Oh, so you're both they're having these conversations, I imagine, at this point about like.
So yeah, we're jumping into some of the old, like with the older kid, we're jumping into some of these conversations, which actually, I'll tell you this. So when I got into the church and I was a freshman in high school. So when I accepted the Lord into my heart, I was a freshman in high school, and right when my hormones were just like raging, right? Like freshman boy. And
It's the same for girls. Just can't talk about it.
totally. And I was, I don't, no, it's okay.
Your hormones, peak level hormones.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My brain does not work all the time. So talking to my now like 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old child, it's a very different conversation than. So I didn't even have that conversation with like my parents. They were like pretty absent when I was younger. They were trying, but they were pretty absent. So my sex education came through the church, and like basically, which was like all the shit I'm not supposed to do, right? Like it wasn't anything educational. It was just like, here's what you're not supposed to do.
Was it your whole family that entered the church, or like was it
No, just me. My
Just
dad
you.
asked me if I was gay because I said
Oh
I
my
wanted to be
gosh.
celibate. Like it was
Wow.
like, and so I was like having to explain this weird world to them, and rightfully so. Like now that I'm out of it, I'm like, oh my God, like how did you love me through that?
They never followed you in with.
I mean, my parents were such lukewarm Christians. God would spit them out of his mouth.
Okay.
That was my view. That was my arrogant view of them. They're really good people. Like they have they've shown me a lot of what it means to accept and love people. You know what I mean? And so I used to think that came from God. I'm realizing no, I came from my family. Like that's something that they've built into me.
There's so many things. So for me, it was a lot of the opposite. So my whole family was in the church, and like the pastors were my mom's cousins. Like they're still actively in ministry, and like it was literally my family. Hearing like sex education stuff in a group full of young boys, and like the teachers, like my cousin, was just weird. And like I remember one time, I don't know if you ever heard of like encounter retreats, but we were at an encounter retreat. They're just like these intense, like you put your sin on the cross and you nail it with a physical
Oh
nail.
yeah.
Yeah, we just
One of those
call-
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember one of those encounter retreats, we had like breakout sessions, and one of them was about like masturbation, and just hearing my cousin talk about his wife, my cousin, just like,
oh my God.
and like talking about like the warmth of what sex. Anyway, it was super weird.
Because how old were you?
This was high school, so yeah, pre-college.
That's fucking weird, man. Like, that's so, like,
It totally is.
Honestly, as I break all this stuff down and look back on it, like accountability groups, all of that stuff, it is so weird. It is so weird, the shit that you share. And for guys, you're talking about like, and you're joking about like women and like having these conversations. And then it's always one like younger guy who's had sex, who probably didn't even wait for marriage, but you know, is married, newly married, and now like talking about how great sex is. And you know what I mean? It's like you're like, what the fuck? Like, this is so weird. I'm 14 years old.
Like teachers ourselves, so we teach music. Like I can't imagine.
I went to school for we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
I went to Berkeley for music education.
Oh, awesome. I loved it there. But like, can you imagine like saying any of this to like a high
Oh my
school
God.
student? No.
No.
No way.
No way. I'm sure it'd be like illegal. Like
saying to a 16-year-old kid right now, hey, one day you're going to be able to put it in your wife and it's going to be
oh my
cool and
gosh.
warm. Like, what the? Dude,
Nope.
oh my gosh, these
Nope.
youth pastors are unhinged, man.
So it's funny, like Emily, the Pharaoh pastor's wife on TikTok, she constantly jokes about how like pastors will often refer to their wife as like the hottest and how hot they are, smoking hot wife, whatever. And I never, it was so normal to me growing up that it wasn't until I see all the people joking about it on TikTok and stuff, I'm like, is that not normal? I guess it's not normal to talk about your smoking hot wife in front of thousands of people at a sermon.
Isn't it a trip? Like that's one of the things that amazes me about TikTok is that you start to realize how normal the crazy stuff that you did was. Like there are people who've had similar experiences. This is nuts. I just met someone, like we became instant best friends. He's another podcaster, but him and I have this really, so I was in a professional band, like when I was younger, like a touring secular, I wasn't a Christian, but my church like was like looking at my position in this band as like I was a missionary, right? So I was this, like missionary, and I was doing all these, I got to do Warped Tour, and
He printed a flyer at a Kinko's for a Bible study while he was on tour.
Like instead of like having fun and partying and stuff, I was like, starting Bible studies on. But anyways, like I never, and I saved myself for marriage. Like I saved myself. I didn't like hook up with any girls or anything on tour. I just met a person that I actually toured with on Warped Tour. Same thing. Saved themselves through marriage through the tour, was like super like fundamentalist, like gonna do the right thing here. And it was such a weird thing to meet someone who has had such a unique experience in life. Like a very like it makes me start to think like shit, there's nothing new under the sun. Like everyone,
it's funny for anybody listening to this. I'm gonna bring it up again. The Phil Drozil thing, that Dirty Rotten Church Kids episode. It revealed to me that this wave of deconstructionists is huge. It is not it's not a small thing, and it's becoming it's well on its way to becoming the majority. And
yeah.
One stat that blew my mind was that a quarter of people active in the church, like people who attend regularly, a quarter of them have deconstructed and do not possess Christian belief at all. And I'm like, that's crazy, but
a big number.
Yeah, a quarter, and like it's the fastest growing, I don't know if you call it religious group or whatever, but it's which is not surprising to me. It's funny every time I talk about this stuff with other people that are still in it. They're like, what are you talking about? The church is exploding. And I'm like, where? They're like, Iran. I'm like, duh. Like, you mentioned any like super desperate country. Like, of course, like if you give somebody a message of hope, it doesn't really matter what the message is. People will latch on to that.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's crazy.
I used to be subscribed to this thought that like America didn't need any help, like that, like America was a saved nation, and that our like anything that we would be doing here for Americans would be like throwing pearls to swine. And I remember like being taught this idea, and I look back on it now, and it was like, of course, it's so much easier to go overseas to a third world country and just like go in and be like, yo, I've got money, let's do this. And of course everyone's gonna be like, dude, a rad, that's so huge for a community, but you just do bad things.
Or even like you see all of the unintended consequences of like good natured intervention.
Oh yeah.
And then you see like in Myanmar with the bicycles.
Oh yeah. There was a village that got a bunch of bicycles, and this like philanthropist, like super rich guy, was like, because they had to, the well was like 15 miles away or something like that, and basically they bought him a bunch of bikes, but they didn't teach him how to fix the bikes. And so like when the dude went back a year later, there were just fucking bikes everywhere, like and they had turned the bikes into like other like tools and stuff. This whole like $1 million bike project just out the window.
But it's just like, it just shows you like how out of touch, and just like not thinking, like you're assuming that these people know how to fix a bike. You're just assuming these things. Or like with Tom's shoes, how you hear of these people are like, we don't want to wear those shoes. Like we're like,
oh yeah, people burning,
like shoe burning parties. Why would you wear these?
Is that a thing? I had no idea.
It's like making these people a marked target of like, you met a white Christian who like sold you Toms. You know what I mean?
I remember there was a while. I mean, I don't know if anything is a thing really anymore. Honestly, like, but I remember hearing in the news that people burned their shoes because they were embarrassed. Like it was like a sign that they were poor, and it was like, good job, Toms.
Yeah, like the church that I grew up in, they started kind of like a charter school, like a private school that was free, and you basically would like had to be poor to attend the school. And a lot of the people who attended the church also attended the school. And so I remember seeing like old pictures of like old classmates or whatever, like alumni, and I'm like, I know that guy, like he goes here, he's he goes to my church. He moved to the United States and he's here, and so we would just make fun of him. It's like, oh, you went to the you went to the poor school, and like the kids who attend the school, it's kind of like Save the Children. You like sponsor a child and you pay like whatever the thing a month, whatever. And so I was like, you were sponsored by someone on this side. Like we were super, like thinking about it, we were super mean to this guy. But like,
Wow.
I feel like there's like you said, there's like the unintended consequences. But I feel like part of the like Christianity, there's like an inherent like colonizer like aspect to it. It's like you can't not colonize. Like evangelism and colonizing, they're like the Venn diagram is like really, really overlappy, you know?
Oh my gosh. 100%. And like, I see this in something as simple as breakfast. And I know you're like, where is she going with
Okay,
it?
let's see.
But I realized this with Christianity is like growing up, like as an Asian person, like I love savory things for breakfast, like soups, noodles, rice, right? And I remember like telling a friend about that, and she's like, ugh, like, ew. She's like, you're drinking, like, you're having soup in the morning? You travel to any other country, like in Asia, like, that's just normal, right? Like, so my point is that I realized, oh my gosh, like, most people really do believe, like, their perspective is the perspective, and anything else that delineates from it is like off brand somehow.
Yeah.
Like in that moment, I realized that this girl like genuinely thought like breakfast everywhere is like waffles, pancakes, orange juice, coffee. Like, and anything that's outside of that is wrong or different or gross.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I feel about Christianity is like, yeah, your religion's like great and all, but like here's the one that's like you're always supposed to find.
Yeah, my mom, she so I'm Dominican. I was born in DR, and my family's like super Dominican. And in Dominican Republic, Christopher Columbus is seen kind of like how we would think of like Joseph Stalin or Hitler or whatever. Like he's like the evil guy. There's no like Columbus Day in Dominican Republic, right? And so my mom like instilled that in me growing up. It was part of like my otherism. It's like you will never celebrate Halloween. You're a Christian. You will never celebrate Columbus Day. You're Dominican, and you'll never there's a lot of things we weren't allowed to do, but Columbus was like a big thing. And this is kind of recent. I explained to my mom, like, Mom, if Christopher Columbus was Muslim, you'd probably be Muslim. And she it broke her brain. She's like, there's no way that this could be true. But at the same time, it's like the only reason why Christianity made its way over here is because of the conquistadores. So like there was no way around it. It's like there's no, and like it's impossible to say that we would be living in a Christian society if it wasn't that like the colonizers, that's the religion that they happen to bring with them, and that's something that like coming to terms with accepting that was like it did a number on me, especially like when I started my deconstruction.
And I'm still trying to figure out where to place that. Like that is one of the things that has been really difficult for me. Like, so some of the, like, I did a lot of like missions trips. I was never a missionary, but I went on a ton of missions trips because they were fun, which that should tell you something right there. Like that I'm saying that, it's like a white dude from California. I just told this story on TikTok, but I remember like this arrogance in me. We were in Belize, which this trip was like, we stayed in like these nice huts in the jungle, like on raised boardwalks. Like we dug a trench for a few days, and then we went through like a cave and explored this cave, went scuba diving with sharks, went and had like lobster and steak on this island.
Glory to Jesus.
All glory to God, right? All glory to God. But we went to this Mayan ruin, right? And it was this guided tour, and we all had this idea like, let's sneak here tonight. Like, let's sneak back here and we'll sneak in and let's claim this ruin as our own. Like, let's claim it back for Jesus. So, like,
you might as well get the flag and just plant a flag.
Totally. So we like snuck our guitar in. We snuck all this like communion in. Like we held a church service on like this ruin. What a bunch of assholes. Like, we're like crying and lifting our hands in worship, like claiming this temple back for the true God. Like, oh my gosh. I remember being like legitimately moved. I thought I had a powerful experience with,
Did you guys see what happened during the Black Lives Matter protests or whatever? That Bethel sent like a worship experience to one of their.
Oh God.
No, I'd love to hear about it.
So like I forgot which one it was. It was an important one. And so they had the people protesting on one side, and then the Bethel people came and set up a little stage with speakers and everything, and had like people singing and like worshiping, whatever. And they made sure that the volume of the speakers was like overpowering the protesters, just to like claim the experience for like make sure that God's presence was in that place. And it was so like Bethel. It they kind of like they made like a big, like my views of them completely shifted over time, even while I was still in the faith. And even and thinking back now, it's like it's pure evil in my opinion. Like it's
Yeah.
and like I kind of see it as like, you know, if we look back at the last 200 years of like the history of our country, like it's really easy to identify who the bad guys are. Like, who are the people who, like, maybe at the time it was controversial. Maybe the country was split. It's like, for example, slavery. Like, who were the people that were like, no, slavery is cool, we should keep it. It just happens to be the same people today. Like, who are the people who are like, you know, we got to keep Jim Crow laws. It's the same people today. Like, it hasn't changed. And I have no doubt that we're going to look back 50 years from now and say like, those were the bad guys. Like, it's really obvious who the bad guys were. And today we kind of see it like two sides of the same coin. It's like the two Americas. Like I cringy just thinking about the fact that I was with the bad guys, you know. Like I marched for anti same-sex marriage in 2015. You know, I was there. I have pictures of my little brother. He's 15 years younger than me. So I have pictures of him really little. He's probably like 9 years old, holding a sign saying like a marriage is between a man and woman and whatever, and marching in like one of the most liberal parts of our country, knowing that we were being hated by like people in our community, and being like, who the hell are these people bringing this dark message to our streets? And feeling like we were like the underdogs who were bringing a positive message. Like coming to terms with that is something that's been really tough on me.
How do you reconcile it? How where are you at with it?
I mean, as the more I think about why I was there, the more compassion and like forgiveness I have for myself. And I kind of have the same thoughts about people who are in it now. It's like, why wouldn't you be a Christian? Like, what? You're a Christian. The likelihood of you being Christian is the same as like someone growing up in Egypt being Muslim. Like, it's gonna happen. And it's really a matter of like, all we can really do is raise our kids. You know, like that's really the only place where we have some kind of influence. And you know, I've had a lot of like struggles thinking about like, what am I replacing this with? You know, like there's like a as for me in my house, we will serve the Lord sign like hidden behind a shelf somewhere downstairs. And I'm like, what am I replacing that thing with? You know? And I had a conversation with someone at work the other day, and they were talking about like sexuality or something, and like you know, so how are you gonna do the birds and the bees with your kids, and like what's that, are they gonna be allowed to date, like what? And I'm like, I don't know, like am I gonna be like the father teaching modesty to my daughter? I have a son and a daughter. They're really little, so I have time to think about it.
Dude, it creeps up so fast. I mean, we were just talking about it because, like, to round out the conversation there.
Yeah.
So now that I have a 12-year-old boy, I did sit him down and I said, hey, here's the deal. Like, you're going to have these urges. It's totally normal. Here's the best place to do it. and here's ways to not get caught or walked in on. Honestly, because I don't want him to feel any shame for a really, really natural thing for him to do.
Yeah.
And I've explained it, like, it seems crazy that he would be comfortable talking about this with me. I promise you, I do not bring this up to him. But he'll talk to me about anything, and I have expressed, like, it's the same for women. Like, everyone is going through it. It's a hormonal change. It's beautiful. It's natural. There's no shame in any of it. You can come talk to us about anything if you want. We'll, like, connect, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So...
More than anything, we just want to be a place for him to be safe. Both the boys to be safe, to like have conversations where it's like yeah.
Yeah, because I got it through a book called Mommy Laid an Egg. I'm not even kidding you. It is a real book.
What a great start. It's like already wrong from on the cover. It's already wrong.
And it, like, the disturbing thing about it is it's two children doing, like, kid activities, but they're basically, like, sexual positions. So, for example, one involves a skateboard, one involves a swing.
Oh my God.
And, like, I
A
looked
swing.
on it, and I feel like this is a really disturbing book. Like, no wonder I was so confused.
Oh my gosh.
It's a real book, Mommy Laid an Egg.
I'm gonna look it up.
Please. The illustrations are incredibly...
We're actually sponsored by Mommy Laid an Egg.
Yeah,
that's why we're bringing it up.
Like,
it's
so confusing.
nice way to drop it in.
Mommy Laid an Egg.
Yeah, I had it was actually really weird on my end. Like, I had all the church stuff, and also like the usual fears that you're gonna go and impregnate 1,000 people. So I was taught abstinence and all that, and covering for my mom, who's my mom's only partner was my dad. Like, they lost virginity to each other, and they did the whole thing, and so like it was really like stifling and closed off, and but at the same time my mom was really radical. Like, she would, like, I remember she would have these crazy conversations with me as a kid, and she'd be like, yeah, that thing where they say, like, don't talk to strangers? It's because a man is going to put his penis in your butt. Like, she would literally tell me this stuff, and like, it was like her scare tactic. It's kind of like Arrested Development. It's like, and that's why you leave a note, like the guy's arm is bleeding or whatever. Yeah, that was her method. But at the same time, she would also teach us that the reason you don't, like, lean out a window is because there's a demon assigned to pulling children out of windows. Like, that's how I was taught.
Did you celebrate Halloween, or were
Hell no.
Yeah, okay.
Never. Oh my gosh, this past Halloween was the first time since that we did the Halloween thing once, and we did it without my mom knowing. And it was my dad. He dressed me up as a soldier and my brother up as a clown. And we went trick-or-treating. And I think I got, like, sick. I got, like, a cold. And my mom was like, you see? That was the enemy. And we got sick on Halloween because that's the enemy. And we never celebrated. I mean, we never celebrated before that or after. And we were taught it's, the devil's birthday and the whole thing. And and I still get, like, this weird cringy feeling that it's hard for me to shake because I don't care anymore. And so my wife was like, can we please dress him up? Like, can we put him in costumes? Whenever we went to Walmart, they picked out costumes, and we were actually on a trip. We were away. We were, like, in South Carolina, and so we secretly did a photo shoot of our kids, and we put them in a private album on Google Photos that my mom would never see, and it was like this crazy shame moment. And my wife was like, I'm putting it in the group chat, and I'm like, oh no, she's gonna find out, and then we're really gonna go to hell. But we just kind of told her, like, hey, we don't care anymore. And my mom took it kind of well. She didn't kick and scream, but I know inside she was kicking and screaming. But yeah, I still get those feelings. And, like, we were actually talking about before we started recording about like sinning and, like, cursing and. Do y'all smoke the ganj? Do y'all smoke weed?
Yeah, we participate in that activity. Um, but we're pretty responsible about it. We're so fucking busy that like we don't have time to smoke a lot of weed during the day. So
But as soon as we're done
as soon
with
as like we're done, kids are in bed, like
all the stuff has been done.
it's our glass of wine. She can't drink because of her health. I don't like drinking, and so yeah.
Yeah, that is the other thing is like it's strange like I used to like not really drink because of religious reasons and then now I like don't drink cuz I'm allergic. So it's like so weird to have this same
Yeah.
like outsider, but it's not like I don't feel bad for myself or anything. I don't miss feeling sick from alcohol, but it's just funny that I'm a full-grown adult and I still don't drink alcohol.
Same.
After all of this.
Same.
It's so funny though, because I remember I was so afraid. So I grew up in like my parents, like my family all grows pot, like and like there's actually some like famous strains like out that have come out of my family. Like they're
Wow.
kind of like OGs in the weed growing game in California. So but and so again, I threw myself into Christianity and like I wanted to smoke pot so bad like later on in life, but I was so afraid to do it that anytime I would smoke like a little bit of pot, I got so paranoid because I'm like, the congregation's gonna find out, like I'm gonna get fired, like all this stuff, which is like now that like I smoke pot, like I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is like such a silly thing to even consider when you realize like how not a big deal it is. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But you're conditioned to thinking that these things they're either satanic or they are like they're going to be like like a piece of your soul will actually die.
The whole like your input, what's your input is going to be your
Garbage
output.
in, garbage
Garbage
out,
in, garbage
like-
out.
Did you guys ever get the toothpaste analogy with the
Oh,
virginity?
God.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Dude,
Oh my God, so much.
yeah, or the one that I always remember like hearing, and I remember like I would be in like high school thinking like, oh, that's a brilliant analogy. Is like the chocolate bar. They, and like everybody gets a little bit of chocolate on their hand, and then at the end, like who the fuck wants the chocolate bar? Like
Oh
what
my
a
God.
shitty thing to
I
say to human. Like
know.
that's awful.
And it's obvious that like they're really, I mean, at least to me, it's like it's more directed at the women because it always felt like he's a dude, he's gonna stumble, but you like should have like no problems just like shutting it down.
I can't even imagine what that's like. Like I don't have the maturity and the capacity to place myself in a Christian woman's mind that got that heard all that stuff growing up. I'm so glad that my daughter will not have to go through that. Like
That's a beautiful sentiment. Yes, exactly. Right? To
Yeah.
not be ashamed of like I have a hard time like not like being naked still sometimes like or like letting my I'm like I don't need to be ashamed of like why am I covering myself up like we're husband and wife, but I still like
Yeah, there's still those. It
or
gets
I'm
its
like
hooks in you.
yeah or I'm like we shouldn't be we should be doing like the dishes or something like a devotional.
Yeah, it's amazing how much it affects like your psyche and just like your mind. Like it's not until I'm coming out of it that I'm seeing like it's such a Christianese word to use, but the strongholds that were on my mind and my soul that I'm still dealing with. Like my
Yeah.
wife has been a little bit more progressive in terms of like accepting things like smoking weed and stuff, and she how that when you smell something, it's like really connected to your memory or whatever. Like when
Yeah.
I smell it, I think of it, and it's all of these things at the same time. Number one, it's sin. It's like this is evil. I'm smelling an evil thing.
Devil's lettuce.
Yeah. Number two, there's like a racism behind it. I feel like Dominicans is the claim to fame. We are the innovators. We're the godfathers and we're the OGs New World racism. Like we invented it. You know, it started here first. Dominicans, you know, we perfected it. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the derogatory terms, they were birthed where I came from. You know,
Oh,
and you know, we were like sandwiched between Puerto Rico and Haiti, and like there's a lot of hate. So Dominicans are really good at racism, is what I mean to say. Like we're experts, and so like I smell it and I immediately get like racist thoughts. Like that's the black people smell. That's like growing up in Jersey City and everywhere I smelled it, that I associated that smell with number one, evil, number two, blackness, number three, you know, hell, like all the negative connotations you could think of, I associated with that smell. And so when my wife lit up for the first time in our 10 years of marriage, it was actually on our 10th anniversary. She was like, are you, is this okay? Are you going to like, are you going to be okay? And I'm like, it's all good. Do your thing. I'm just trying to like flex my tolerance muscle. And I couldn't. Like I smelled it and immediately it was like like the werewolf thing, like the primal thing that inside of me, that where I was raised to consider this an evil act, came out, and I tried my best to not show it, and I didn't say anything, but I was fighting it inside, and I hate that. I'm like, I don't want my kids to go through this. Like, I don't want them to hate their neighbors. I literally hated my neighbors growing up because they would smoke every day, all the time.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
I thought my parents were evil. Like I thought my parents were the worst people in the world because they grew pot.
Well, I mean, they even like just the indoctrination of like God loves you more than your parents do. Like it makes it so easy
Mm,
to be like, I don't need anyone in my life but God. If he loves me more than anyone.
yeah.
You know, and it's really like, to me, in my experience, it was a manipulative way to like pull me away from them, because my family, like, they weren't really religious at all. You know what I mean? And so like I just stopped going home to visit them. I was like, the people here in LA need me, like the homeless here need me, like my family doesn't need to see me, like they're not Christian anyway. Like just really just like demonizing these people who have really no say or any part in like this religious journey that I'm going on, and yet I'm like, everyone's in it.
Yeah. I what my grandma she's totally kooky. Like she is out there. She did some really crazy things when I was growing up. But she's a really unique, interesting person. And from about the age of 20 till she died when I was like maybe 35, our relationship really suffered because she was trying to tell me like, hey, the Bible's not real. Like the Bible is like, it's full of like man-made things that are going to cause damage in your life. And I took that and I brought it to my pastor, and they're like, you're being persecuted. This is persecution. And so I placed my grandma in a different place in my life from then on. And this is one of my biggest regrets now in life, is like I look back on it like, I wish I could have known my grandma now, not being a Christian, because we would have had so many great conversations. And I think I would have really gotten to know this woman, but instead, like I had to alienate her from my life. She was a bad person because she was trying to persecute me.
yeah, I get the same feeling when I look at people from high school. Like when Facebook blew up and you're connecting to all people that you haven't talked to in 20 years, whatever. There's a lot of people that I grew up with that are still friends with each other. And it's like, wow, these are apparently lifelong friendships. And I was never part of those social circles because I was raised being told that like you're in this world and not of it. And so like the only close friends I had were through church, and like I was at school, not like an outcast or anything. Like I still got along with people, but I had this thing in the back of my mind. It's like we can only be so close because you're not saved. And until you join me in church, which is so funny that the only friend that came out of that I'm still friends with in high school is because he converted and became a Christian. And and like I regret that so much. I'm like, again, this is another one of these things that I want my kids to meet people and be friends with them forever. Like that's something that I never really got to enjoy. And I totally understand why people vote the way they do. Like looking at it now, I'm like, of course you would vote that way. Like there's no way around it. Like if that primal urge it came over me when I smelled the weed or whatever. Imagine somebody telling you we're gonna legalize this and
Yeah.
across the whole country. Like, oh my god, like the devil's lettuce, as you said. Like it's totally understandable. And I was actually really ignorant to that. Like I grew up in a church that was relatively progressive, fiscally progressive. Because there's like the two kinds. There's like the socially and the fiscally. There's like, do we allow gay people to get married? No, because that's a sin. But are we okay with like welfare? It's like yes, because we're all poor immigrants in this church. So we were fiscally progressive and socially conservative, and I didn't know that until I started attending the big white megachurch. And I didn't, and I thought that everybody, it's like, oh, we live in the most densely populated state in the country. We all think this way, right? No, I didn't know that, the suburban whites were Trumpers. And I didn't know that Trumpers existed. Like it was completely like foreign to me. And that it was a rude awakening for me. And like, it's really like, it's really scary because these are things that don't go away in one generation or two. Like it'll be a while. Until we move what center looks like, but did you guys see like what the voter turnout looked like for the midterms? I don't know how political. I'm just assuming.
We tend to not like to talk about politics, honestly, just because it's messy in our family. So we choose to.
Yeah, like it's really messy in my family too.
I mean, I have no problem saying that I think Donald Trump is a piece of shit and people shouldn't fucking vote Republican.
Oh, yeah.
I have no problem saying that, but I just like honestly like this whole Christian nationalism thing. It's been a really weird. So for me, I got out of the church in 2019, right? Mm-hmm. And I kind of like I turned off. I lost my community. I lost lost is such a victim word. There was just a lot that happened in that time. Like anyone who kind of deconstructs, especially if you're in your place of leadership in the church. But I kind of like blacked out mentally in that time when it came to politics and religion. Like I couldn't have anything to do with it because I was just trying to stay above water personally.
Understandably so. Totally.
And so it was, and I had stayed so close to that stuff before, so like for the first time in my life, I find myself like out of politics. Now that I'm kind of like dipping back in, it's like, what a mess. Like,
oh my gosh,
how different, like the trajectory was like crazier than I thought. You know what I mean? Like you grow up at least for me, like I grew up in California. I grew up white, I didn't know that all this terrible stuff I was shielded from a lot of things. The society was set up that way for me. I was just shielded from a lot of things. And so, like seeing this flood of like Christian nationalism hit Christianity and seeing like that's what Christianity is becoming it's wild for me. Cause like I said, I didn't grow up with all of the dogma. I didn't grow up with all of the cultural Christianity. And I grew up like in a very liberal state, in a very liberal area. So I'm always kind of naive to it and thinking like, I cannot believe it's going to get better. It's going to stop. And then you just see it growing and you're like, oh my God, like this is insane.
Yeah. What I was going to say, like, if you look at the like who voted in the midterms and how they voted, it was actually really encouraging. Like the results were like our country really is split down the middle. Like it's kind of scary how split down the middle it is. But if you look at who voted, it's like 78% or something of the young vote was blue, and it's like the highest that it's ever been. So it gives me hope for like the next generation. Like,
and it was a lot of young voters too, right? That's what I heard. It was a lot of young voters, and which I think some of the Republicans who are running came out like saying like started trying to change bills to raise the voting age after, which is just like, okay, here we go. It's all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same.
But that's one thing that does give me hope that, like, there's a good chance that the next generation will be better. I mean, we have been progressively getting better over the years and generations, and so just knowing that it won't stay crappy forever is nice to know.
Hopefully.
I hope so. Honestly, I mean, we have this conversation quite a bit. We're just trying to create a peaceful, like harmonious environment. I know that sounds like totally hippie, but we're really trying to create like a peaceful spot for us in this world, and then other people too. Like we really genuinely like helping people. So like when we were talking about like the apitherapy, that's what it's called with her bee venom therapy. We do a lot of live streaming for that, and we give out this information that other companies charge like thousands and thousands of dollars off of. Give it away for free because someone came along and helped us, and it's one of the first acts of service that we've been able to do outside of the church, and it feels great to not have to give that to God. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is like we're just being like trying to be good humans here. And so, and it's kind of the same with like what we're trying to do on the other TikTok we have on, how we've met. The deconstructing one is we're trying to, one, be a safe place for people who have deconstructed. Like I often say to people who try and combat me in the comments, like, our content's not for you. Like, we're not making content for you. I don't like arguing. I turn into a total dickhead when I argue with people, and it's not who I like to be. It's not like
Me too.
we really like to be nice people, and I don't want to get in a fight with someone. But I also won't I'll stand up for what's right as well. You know what I mean? So we're just trying to like be good humans, and it's nice to be a good human outside of the church. And because I thought that part, like, what if that's true? What if it does go away? If I stop like going to the church and stop believing in the Bible, like, will I still be a good person? And I think I'm a better person now than I ever have been. Like
I know I'm a better person. Like I was way more judgmental than I ever like really wanted to be.
It's so funny. Like I grew up being told that being a good person is not good. Like your goodness and your value comes from Christ. So like aiming to be a good person is pointless because we all fall short and the wages of sin is death and blah, blah, blah. Like not that there's no point in being good, but it's like, it's not what's going to get you into heaven. So like being good is just a side effect of being saved. So it's like you said, like if I lose my salvation, quote unquote, will I start being bad? Like, will I then lose like the reason to be good? And it's funny because for indirect reasons, it has for me. I'm like more of a dick now. No, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is like I actually have this thing now where Christian behaviors give me a little bit of PTSD. Like I don't play guitar anymore. I have these guitars. I moved into this house in May. I haven't touched them since I hung them on the wall. I still get like church vibes whenever I pick one up, and so it like hurts me sometimes to play guitar, and it gives me like just like negative feelings, and I know that it's not going to be that way forever, but I associate like, which sounds insane, but like acts of kindness and like helping people with like being a missionary and spreading the gospel and whatever, and it gives me icky vibes, and so I it's like I can't even get myself like to do like a soup kitchen thing because I'm like, this feels churchy to me, and I hate this feeling.
Yes.
And I want to get over that. But it isn't a direct side effect of deconstructing. And like, another thing that I don't want for my kids, I want to be able to just help people with no strings attached,
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the greatest things that the kids tell us is that they see us, they're always saying like, you guys are so nice to people and you always take time out to help people. And to me, that's all I care about. Like that my kids see this, right? Like they see me, they see their stepmom, they see us being good humans to other people and not done in the name of like a god because we have to. Like that was always a struggle for me.
When was the last time you tithed? This
Oh,
sounds like a left field question, but
oh, I love this question.
Yeah.
I didn't tithe when I was in the church. I always
really?
fucking lied about it.
Are you
Like,
serious?
yeah, totally. Fuck tithing, man. I was so broke. Honestly, like they did not pay me well enough to tithe. Like I would justify it in my head. I would say I worked, and it's true. I was supposed to work 40 hours. I would be putting like 60, 70 hour work, weeks in, not seeing my kids, like, and so yeah, I didn't tithe, but I remember there was a time where like an email went out to all the pastors saying, "Hey, we're going to start checking your giving
Oh
records."
man.
And I was so scared. I thought I was gonna get fired because I was like, I remember being like, "Fuck, I gotta start giving." Like I dropped like $1,000 into the offering.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
So
no, wait, hold on, strike that. I fucking lied about that too.
oh my
Like,
god.
I was giving in cash. Now I'm remembering it.
Oh my
you go.
gosh.
Yeah, I like was either I was like so manic with it. Either I'd give like so much money or like I just didn't, and like so I don't know what it was about me. And then like also I volunteer. Like I felt like my tithing was through like volunteering. But like when you look back on it, it's like you make these weird exceptions for little things.
But it was so hard, like being in the mega church though, like you're spending legit. I spent, $60,000 on one projector, right? So like I'm seeing where this money is going because I was in charge of all of the gear inside the auditorium. So like one projector, like our sound system,
I'm fully aware. I was a worship leader.
smoke
Yeah.
machine or the haze machine fluid alone, right? Like
Ew, I just smelled it.
all of this stuff, like I had a budget that was like $80,000 just for maintenance on this equipment, and so I'm like, fuck that, I'm not giving money to this.
So I tithed pre-tax my whole megachurch
dude.
career, and I also tithed post tax, which is just painful or whatever. Before that, for as long as I've had a job, I tithed. I didn't stop tithing until I left the church.
Carlos, you judging me just a little bit, because like you were given so much money and I wasn't.
No. It's the opposite. I'm like, why? I think about all that money. I'm like, I could have invested that. Like, I'm like, man, I wish I didn't tithe. I wish I just kept all that money. And like, it's a solid chunk of money. And like, just thinking about it now, it's actually like it's such bad stewarding of your funds. Like, why would you? It's really sad, and people give above and beyond, way above and beyond their time.
If you just look alone at auditoriums across America, you have these giant, beautiful buildings that are used once, maybe twice a week. It's a fucking shame that these like I remember thinking like in our area alone, there are like, probably a dozen mega churches, all with huge rooms. And there is a homeless problem in San Francisco. I don't know if you've heard about it at all, but it is crazy what's happening in San Francisco.
Want to hear a crazy story?
Let's hear it.
So I worked at this mega church. This is the same mega church. They had this thing where it was we're gonna do like a homeless awareness event. And the way that it worked is, mind you, this is a church that it's a $8 million facility or whatever, in the middle of one of the richest areas of New Jersey, and this area is, I don't know, like 85% white or whatever. And what they were gonna do is you sign up for the event, and everyone was gonna sleep in the parking lot with. It's such a cringy story to tell. I have a cousin who's a social worker, and I couldn't even get halfway through the intro, and she was like, "Why is this happening?" Right? So it's like you had all these white people in like these cardboard tents and stuff in the parking lot of the church, and they were going to sleep there one night. And for everyone who signed up, the church would donate like an X amount of dollars to some like homeless whatever organization. And
Yeah.
and people were like cold, so they slept inside. They just went inside the church and slept like in the lobby. And I'm like, you kind of missed the point. You're supposed and it's just so weird, like you know, people that I know donated like literally $1 million to the church that have enough money to do something like that easily every year, sleeping in a parking lot. And I'm like, dude, like, if you can donate $1 million to a church, you can literally buy like 4 houses.
I know.
I know.
Just house
It's
people.
insane.
Like, just buy them homes. They
Yeah,
don't.
and then seeing like how much control the like donators end up having. You know, like I went to Azusa Pacific University for college, and the Dillon Center is donated by the frickin' Dillons. Like you sometimes just don't think about it, but you realize how much control the largest investor really can have, because if they have a problem with something, like they're definitely gonna bring it up if they have been giving like $1 million.
Yeah. I have to be careful. I heard of a guy once who worked at a church, and the church was getting really close to being an open and affirming church. And there was a big investor.
For those unaware, open and affirming means they're okay with gay people, right?
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and well, that was our church. We would trick gay people into going to it. Like in our welcome video, it would be like, everyone is welcome. Like if you're gay, if you're straight, blah, 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 right? And but then like once you got in the church, you realize like, oh, like all the pastors here have signed contracts saying they will not do a same-sex marriage because, and I always, this is my friend's church told me this story about this person who had a lot of money in their church, gave a lot of this money, like to the tune of like, I think it was like, we're talking tens, maybe $20 million
Wow.
For a large building. And they controlled the loan and the percentage of the loan that the church had to give back. So shortly after, like that church got all that stuff figured out, they said like, hey, we're going to make you sign contracts saying you won't do same-sex marriages.
And same thing at Azusa Pacific University. It's like everyone's welcome, like no matter what, but we all have to sign a contract that like it's terrible that it includes like no drinking on campus, and also marriage should be between a man and a woman, like are like somewhat in the same clause.
Like, don't light your mattress on fire or kiss a dude if you're a dude.
No parties, and like we're preaching this like we all love each other kinds of things, and it like, I mean, the people like, I don't want to say this word, but a terrible like slur was spray painted on the housing like shortly after this, and it's like this is so like just you can't stomach it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To like, you're signing this contract and then you're seeing it like literally hurt at other people to even like unaliving them.
Yeah.
What
It's awful.
was the, because for me it was the like homosexuality was the first trigger for me, like not my sexuality, but like my interpretation of the Bible and how the Bible treats gay people or whatever. That was what started unraveling for me. What was it for you?
Same, honestly. So for me, I will say this about the church that I was a part of. They did have really good intentions. They were trying to be progressive. They were trying to make change. I was a big part of that change. Like that for me, like I was always trying to be like, what can I get away with within this kooky ass religion? Like what's not going to get me fired from my job? Surprisingly, a lot didn't get me fired. I was actually like, they let an idiot like me be on staff, but they would bring in. So essentially, we did like 7 years, legitimately 7 years of going through those clobber passages as a leadership team, as a church. It took 7 years to develop like what And in our minds, we were doing it right. We're going to take a long time. We're going to read a bunch of books. We brought in, do you know who Justin Lee is? This is like, I don't know what he's doing now, but he had written a book back then called Torn, and he was like a very out, openly gay Christian. So we brought him into the church to give one side. He gave his side. It was like called like side A, and then there was side B. Like side A was you can be a Christian who's gay and in a relationship, and God will honor that.
When you say you brought him in, was it like he spoke to the congregation, or was it like to just the staff?
No, he spoke to. We had a night. It was like we brought him in for an event, and so but we also brought someone in from side B, which was like being gay is okay in the eyes of the Lord. You just can't act on it, right? Like so we brought in these two sides, and that was our position. Like we're going to be a church full of side A and full of side B. But I spent 7 years deconstructing these clobber passages, right? And it ultimately led into the deconstruction of a lot of other crazy stuff that I believed. So by the time that I had left the church, there really wasn't a ton for me to deconstruct other than the church culture stuff. So that's kind of like what has been the hardest for me is deconstructing the church, the cultural church stuff, because I grew up in it, right? Like I was raised in like the modern megachurch, and I learned a lot of weird stuff, like a lot of weird stuff from that, and just being in that culture, and then being a leader in leadership in that culture as well was like nuts, man.
It was like really it was a big eye-opening thing for me. So I grew up, and it's really similar to you. It's like non-affirming, but well, you know, the doors are open for all and whatever. But forget about serving in any form of leadership. Like if you're gonna like lead a small group, or no, that was like not a thing for if you're gay. And the way that I saw it was, the way that I treated it was, I just kind of put it on like the back of my mind, and it was not something that I needed to think about. I didn't have anybody particularly close to me that was gay or whatever, and like I just didn't have to deal with it. You know, like it was not a thing that I wanted to unpack. And I think I knew in the back of my mind that the second that I started unpacking, I was going to hate what I was going to find. So I just never went there. But I did have someone who was very close to me. He's like a person that we call a cousin, but he's not actually related to me. He's like a really close friend of the family who we all knew was gay, but never came out. So that conversation just didn't need to happen. And it didn't happen until he finally came out. And I was like, I guess I got to think about this now. You know, like, how do I treat you? How do I see you? What do I do about this? And by then he was already kind of like estranged from the family. He wasn't like for me growing up, family and church were the same thing. So like he wasn't around. So it was like not something that I had to think about like directly. And then finally I was like, I really love this person. He's family to me. So I was like, I need to come to terms with how I'm seeing this or viewing this. And right then I knew, I was like, I literally don't care what the Bible says. Like I really don't. I love this person, and I would love him as much as I would love somebody. Not like the Christian love where you're like, oh, I love you, but there's like boundaries around. Just don't try to serve. And like, no, I'm loving you 100%.
Yep.
And I knew that I needed to like delete that part of the Bible from my mind. And as soon as I was able to do that, I was like, then I could delete the whole thing. Like I started like, that's when I finally got into like really deconstructing, like literally, you know.
So this is great. When I was in high school, I had a friend who came out to me, and we were in youth group together. And this was like, I'm old, so this was a while. Like coming out in high school is unheard of, right? Like at this time, like. So I'm in high school. This is probably like 1995. And he came out to me, and shortly after we were on a retreat, and some other guys started picking on him, and I got into like a fight with these guys, and ended up like getting close to this guy, and who was really, really struggling. You know, his words was struggling with homosexuality and all this stuff, and that's right when I really started to see how damaging and how hurtful this was, because like this guy was never welcomed, never fully accepted in the church because everyone kind of knew. And I watched it just be, and then he like, I wish I knew, I don't know where he is now. I've actually since tried to look him up, but I know the last I had heard, he did go to like the conversion therapy and all that stuff, which is just heartbreaking for me to hear. I'm getting emotional talking because like I remember how hard it was for him. Like he wanted to love God so bad. Like, and if you know the heart of a 16-year-old, like sold out, full abandoned Christian, like I know that feeling of just like, I would give anything for God. Like I know he felt that same like feeling for God. And it breaks my heart to know that like he was never fully accepted by this community, or by this God, like by this God that like, he's being told by these Christians, like God loves everybody, but it's not true. Like he doesn't love gay people because your book's saying that. And your like followers are all saying it louder than anything,
Yeah.
So, anyways, so I say that all because I really felt like that, like, to speak a little Christian lingo, like it really did some heart work in me and changed my heart. And I like promised from that moment I would never make anyone, at that time I would just say gay, feel bad about themselves for it. And it was cool. I got to be a safe place for a lot of people. Like I became a pastor who a lot of people like came out to, which was kind of I'm glad for it, but I'm also like, probably need to make some phone calls and apologize to some people.
Yeah, and mine has just been like suppressing it through the whole thing. Like aside from like purity culture, like there's no way that I'm going to be able to like express like the feelings of like attraction towards someone of the same sex. Like I haven't even talked to my parents about this. Like I honestly am thinking like hopefully they don't ever look this up. But like I'm never gonna tell my grandparents ever. There's no way. I just can't. There's no point. What is that going to do? So like me feeling like, because I had always struggled with depression and like always being like, I genuinely feel like I love, like I could love anybody, like a man, woman, whatever. And like it made me feel like there's something, like God made me, there's something wrong in me, or that he made me this way. And that's what started to unravel it more, because I was like, why would I follow somebody who like actively is like truly, if he really made me this way, like whatever it was. And like, why would I want to follow somebody that like makes people gay and then they're not accepted anyway? So like just from that perspective, but I never could feel like I could be an ally because it would show my hand also. So I felt like I was just I felt like a complete coward because like my silence just let it seem like I was straight and just like, yeah, you shouldn't be thinking about boobs,
That man, you just said something that made me think of that too. My justification, because like after signing that contract, I had to justify to myself that I wouldn't do a same-sex marriage. My justification was, and I would say this, you've heard me say this, I was trying to cast the biggest net. I wanted to get Christians and the LGBTQIA community. You know what I mean? Like, so my job is to cast the widest net. And in reality, I was just taking a really comfy, safe position right in the middle of the fucking fence,
Yeah,
which does happen.
What's crazy is like the way that we were raised, justifying the whole thing was like, you have an inherent thing you're born with where you want to fornicate and you want to cheat on your wife and you want to whatever, and these are sins just the same. But like I get married and and like be with my wife and not be like shunned by a community or whatever. Like it's not the same at all. And it's really sad that people just don't have the ability to do that. But I want to be respectful of your time. I know there's a chicken out there.
Oh
You guys
gosh,
are
yeah,
cooking this.
it's like 11 o'clock for you.
Well, I'm good. I'm a night owl, so don't worry about me. But I'm so glad I got to talk to you guys. How can people find you? Like, what? Because you guys have like a lot of accounts.
Yeah, this is the worst question to ask us. This is like we are hyper creative and just we have a million projects. Like I think we start 10 bands every week. It's just, our main account is this TikTok account that we're doing where we're basically taking these songs, we're taking scripture and then writing these melodies that sound just like worship. It's a total parody. The whole goal is just to throw basically say like, hey, we're throwing kind of these scriptures back at you that a lot of people misinterpret. We're totally misinterpreting these scriptures. Like
Totally take that
we're taking them out of context.
I haven't looked up the Aramaic
like,
for any of these.
like
Well, you're not really interpreting them. You're just reading them out loud. Like that's, I don't know.
Exactly.
If it sounds crazy, it's not your fault.
But it feels like a really so for us, like we spend a lot of time being silent. For us, like if we're honest, to show our hand a little bit, like we really have a heart for LGBTQ plus. And trans youth especially. We want the Bible to stop being weaponized, and it's being weaponized and it's being used to literally kill children. Like children are killing themselves because this crazy book is telling them the shooting that just happened. Like, focus on it. Don't get me started. Jeez.
Yeah.
I'll go off on James Dobson all day. But anyway, so for us, we're not even out there trying to say God's not real. We're not out there trying to say like Christians are dumb or anything like that. Our message is like, stop weaponizing the Bible.
And also, like, if you can have a laugh at this, like that laugh can turn into a small spark of doubt, and that's all we want is just think about it. Just think about it.
It's the hippie putting the flower on in the rifle. It's
yeah,
a little more aggressively. Like there's a little bit of like I'm gonna pinch your nuts while I do that. You know what I mean?
So what's that account? How do you spell it so people know?
you could type in how the sausage is made.
Yeah, how the sausage is made, or at Cole Brewski. We also have our Garden Punks account, which is
super fun, by the way. Now that you know what stinging is.
Yeah, so it's our at Garden Punks Co.
And that's like our more candid life, the bee stinging. It's a lot of poop stories.
Yeah, a lot of like stories about us shitting our pants, and we don't take ourselves very serious at all. Like we truly.
And we hope that just gives safety to other people. Like we don't have to be ashamed of. Like we all do these things.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you guys for your time, and I'm so glad we got to talk and get to know your stories and stuff. And
same to us, and definitely not the end.
I plan on having you on again eventually.
Love it.
Yes.
So
yes.
I have got a million stories, especially ministry stories, that will just make you cry, laughing.
Okay.
Okay. We're like, which way?
Well, thank you so much. Have a good night, and we'll talk again soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
All right.